Scream 6. Oh boy, I'm going to try to do as much as this review without spoilers, but I think to really get into my problems with this movie, I do need to talk some spoilers, but I will just kind of go over the movie very briefly, non-spoiler, and then I'll warn you before I get into spoilers. So most of this review will be non-spoilers. I kind of just tend to talk openly about movies, but if I really try to feel like, oh, there's a plot point in this movie where if I say this, it might ruin your experience, I do try to warn you. So we'll get into that. But Scream 6, I was very excited about. I got this cool Ghostface cup topper that I got at work. Really cool. That's going up top of that shelf behind you. Very neat. I got these posters. I went to the fan event, which I was very disappointed with this year's fan event because with the last Scream movie, they did a fan event. And the fan event, they actually did. The fan event they did last year, and they interviewed the directors at the end of it, and they went into some behind the scenes talk with actors and stuff. They interviewed Dewey, who died in the movie in the last one, so that was like nice. It was great. And then this year, it was just you got a poster, and then you got to watch the movie in 3D. And I will tell you, the 3D for this movie is absolute ass. I, at several points during the movie, took off my glasses because people were just talking, and the movie wasn't even blurry. And then also, clearly this movie was not filmed to be in 3D because a lot of the very violent, brutal action sequences, something you'd want to see in 3D is like limbs coming off, being thrown at you, blood, guts bouncing around. It's not like that, which is fine because it's still great action and kill scenes and great moments in the movie. But but in terms of like you watching that in 3D, it is not good. It is absolutely not worth your dollar. I was not planning to watch this in 3D. I'm glad I did so I can warn people not to go watch this in 3D. But my plan was just to watch it in just standard because I felt like that was fine. And that's how I would rather see it. But because I went to the fan event, I thought they were going to interview the directors at the end, which they did not. I was just very upset by this. So that's one thing that bogged me during the movie. And it did make my experience worse. And that's why I'm curious to go watch this movie a second time, where I was really tired, to be honest, watching this movie. Second, the 3D wasn't great. So I might go see this a second time just to kind of make myself, more ready and prepared for this movie, I guess. But I probably won't do that in the theater. I'll probably just wait the home video. Just like I really want to go see Scream 5 again and never went to go see it in the theater a second time like I kept saying I would. But I really enjoyed this movie for the kills, the action scenes, the references to the other sequels. Because I think what's great is Scream, the last one, the fifth one, felt very much like just a sequel to the first one. And it was great at being that. And that was intentional, but this one feels like a sequel to all the movies. Felt like, because if you just watched the first Scream, you would have understood that last Scream movie really well. And then if you watch this one, and you haven't seen any of the sequels, you're not going to understand a lot of the plot of this movie. In fact, I wish I had rewatched the sequels closer to watching this movie because of the fact that how heavily it tied into those sequences. There were lots of references I didn't get, but the ones I understood, I really enjoyed, and the cameos in this movie were great, and I was just happy about that. It was a good movie, and yeah, I think this movie had some really cool action sequences, stuff we've never seen in this franchise ever before because it was set in New York and allowed them to do really cool things. However, the plot of this movie was not great, and now we're going to get into my spoilers. So first of all, a lot of people, spoiler warning, click off now. Now we'll get into the spoilers there. A lot of people really worry about Neve Campbell or Sydney not coming back. Is it Neve Campbell? I forget. Anyway, Sydney didn't come back, and a lot of people are very upset by this for various reasons. I'm not here to go into how I feel on the subject of why she didn't come back, whatever, pay disputes. That's not in my business. I don't know the details, so I'm not going to accuse nobody. I am going to be like, it's a little bit weird. But where I'm at with how they sent her off, She just said that she wanted to go enjoy life with her family, and that's great. I think that's a great send off. It felt like Gina Carano's send off in The Mandalorian recently, where like she's mentioning a line where we know where she's at, we know what they're doing, and if they want to come back, then come back, but most likely they're not, which is fine. And I think that's how I felt about this, and I was okay with that, and I was really happy and satisfied with how that character did that. My problem with this movie was just the plot of this movie is really stupid in a lot of instances. I don't think the whole like killer plot is stupid. It's just the fact that we're setting this in New York. It's clearly not done for any other reason than New York was a cool setting that allowed them to do some really cool things. Because when I watched this movie, both of our characters, Jenna Ortega's character and her sister, was it Sam, right? They're dealing with this trauma of what had happened to them last year in the last Scream movie. It's been a year just like it's been a year for us, the audience, since that happened. And they're adjusting, they're trying to figure things out, right? That's cool. But why on earth would you move to New York? Okay, these people lived in a small town, a small community where people knew each other, people talked, right? That's one of the most famous parts of the Scream movies, is that people lived in these small areas and people talked, right? But why on earth would you move to a gigantic city? The sister talks about to her therapist and being in the movie she has trust issues. You wouldn't move to a giant city with lots of people, things like that. You also wouldn't like, move to a city like New York where crime rates are higher, things like that. And so I get it, but it's also so weird how a lot of these events of Ghostface are all lining up to be in New York. It doesn't fully make sense at all points. It was cool, and I enjoyed the references, and I enjoyed the killer's plot in the movie. Cool. I also think that the commentary in this movie was about how serial killers, people get inspired by watching serial killers, and they're really invested in those stories, And that's a great commentary. They do not dive deep enough into it. It's not a main vocal part of the movie. It didn't feel like that was a really integral commentary to the movie. There's just a lot of stuff here that's happening in this movie because of the new setting, the new characters, and trying to make sense of why this is all happening in New York when it really just doesn't need to happen in New York. I guess this is the setting probably for the rest of the franchise. Cool. I am fine with that. I just think that there's some weirdness to this plot and what they've done here. And I think that maybe we should just make one more movie to close out the trilogy here and then just stop. I don't think it'll happen like that, because if this movie makes more money than last, obviously Scream 7's already been greenlit, so then they're going to, and so obviously Scream 7's probably going to do better than the last one, and then they're going to want to do 8, and we're probably going to get to Scream 10 at some point. That's just where we are going to go, and I guess that's what's going to happen, and if they can make it work, they can make it work. I'm really glad they didn't kill Gale, because when I watched this movie, I was like, man, they're going to kill Gale. And if they kill Gale, that felt very cheap to me because they killed Dewey. And so her being more into the franchise. Also, it would mean that there's no legacy characters. And me and someone, I'd let someone into the movie before I clocked out before my shift. And she looked at me and we were talking about the movie afterwards. And she's like, at least they didn't pull Star Wars and kill all the old characters, right? And that's great. Because that's kind of where we're at. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I had a good time. I liked the movie. I think it's worth watching this weekend in theaters. And at the end of the day, Scream's a great franchise. Never been a bad movie. This one isn't a bad movie. It just has some issues that just didn't work for me. And I enjoyed the movie, had fun, but I can't lie and say I wasn't a little disappointed in what the shit happened in this movie, even though I still enjoyed the movie. Let me know your thoughts, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.